Hello and welcome to the Sophomore 2 version 1 medication calculation practice questions. Number 1, the client is to receive ibuprofen PO 100 milligrams BID. The medication is available as ibuprofen oral solution 100 milligrams per 5 ml. How many teaspoons of medication would the patient receive per dose? How many teaspoons of medication would the patient receive per day? There's a two-part question. So the first part, we are looking for the units, teaspoons per dose. The second part of the question, we are looking for teaspoons per day. Go ahead and box that in the top left-hand corner so you remember what units we're looking for. And you always want to write down these three: order, availability, and frequency. So our order is 100 milligrams per dose. Our frequency is BID, or 2 doses per day. Our availability is 100 milligrams per 5 mLs. As you can see, we have dose, milligrams, mLs, and day in our units. However, we're missing the final units, what they want, which are teaspoons. So we're going to go ahead and write down the conversion, which is 1 teaspoon per 5 mLs that you need to memorize. So we're going to go ahead and do the first part, which is writing down the equation, order times available, and you want 100 milligrams per dose. And you want milligrams on the denominator, so your milligram units cancel, and you're left with mLs per dose, with filling in the numbers 5 and 100. However, we want to convert it into teaspoons. So you want mLs in the 5 mLs in the numerator, and you want 5 mLs in the denominator, so the mL units cancel, and you're left with teaspoon in the numerator. So 100 times 5 is 500, divided by 100 times 5 is 500, equals 1 teaspoon per dose. And that's the answer for the first part of the question. And our second part is looking for teaspoons per day. So I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite it, 1 teaspoon per dose. And you want the dose units to cancel, which means your day is going to be in the denominator. Fill in your numbers, and you get 2 teaspoons per day. So the first part of the answer is 1 teaspoon per dose. And the second part is 2 teaspoons per day. Final answer for number 1. Number 2, the nurse received the order to prepare a 75 milligram dose of Demerol meperidine IM stat. Medication available is meperidine 50 milligrams per 1 ml. How much will the nurse draw up to administer the correct dose? So the units that we're looking for are going to be mLs per dose. We want to write down these 3 things always: order, available, and frequency. So the order is 75 milligrams per dose. Your frequency is stat, so it's just going to be 1 dose per 1 day right now. And your availability is 50 milligrams. Let me rewrite the 5. 50 milligrams per 1 ml. So as you can see, we have mLs per dose, and we just want to cancel our milligrams. So we're going to go ahead and write down our equation. And you have 75 milligrams per dose. You want the milligram units to cancel, which means you want mLs on the numerator. Fill in your numbers. So using your calculator, you have 75 divided by 50, which is 1.5 mLs per dose. Final answer, 1.5 mLs per dose. And just to make sure that you understand what you're doing for this specific medication calculation question is that you're going to give it intramuscularly or IM. So how would you do this? You have different size syringes. So there's a 1 ml syringe, a 3 ml, 5 ml, and 10 ml syringe. So out of these syringes, which one would you use to draw up your 1.5 ml dose? You wouldn't use the 1 ml because it's too small. 10 mLs is too big, so it's between the 3 and the 5. I prefer using the 3 ml syringe. And when you use your syringe, you're going to make sure that you have the appropriate size needle based on your patient's weight and age. Because you want to make sure that you have the appropriate gauge and length. So it's going to be different for an infant, to a toddler, to a child, to an adult. So teen plus, teen to adult. So remember, when you're doing these medication calculation questions, you're not only figuring out the math, but you're actually trying to clinically understand what you're doing and why you're doing things. Number 3, the provider order is colistin, colistimethate, sodium 1.2 million units, IM to treat ventilator-associated pneumonia. The medication available is 500,000 units per ml. How many mLs will the nurse administer? So for this for the units, we're looking for mLs per dose. So we have our order, the availability, and the frequency. Our order is 1.2. So when you write this out, go ahead and write 1,200,000, 000 units per dose. And it's going to be 1 dose per 1 day. Our availability is 500,000 units per ml. The reason why I have you write out 1,200,000 is to make sure that you input the right amount of zeros into your calculator, because that can give you the wrong answer. So your order is 1.2 million units with 5 zeros. Your availability, you want the units to cancel, and you're left with mLs per dose. Fill in your numbers. And remember, you're going to do 1.2 million divided by 500,000 is 2.4 per dose, which is your final answer. And always thinking about it, which syringe would you use if you had a 1 ml, 3 ml, 5 ml, or 10 ml syringe? 1 is too small, 10 is too big. I would use the 3 ml syringe, and making sure, because we're giving it IM, that you get the appropriate size needle. Think about the gauge, which is the size, the length, and make sure it's appropriate for the patient's weight and age. Number 4, the order is for heparin sodium 3,000 units sub-Q BID. The medication is available as 5,000 units per 1 ml. How many mLs would the RN administer per dose? How many mLs would the RN administer per day? So this is a two-part question looking for mLs per dose and mLs per day. And remember to write down your order, your availability, and your frequency. So your order is for 3,000 units per dose. Your frequency is going to be 2 doses per 1 day, or BID. Your availability is going to be 5,000 units per 1 ml. So we're going to write down the equation: order times available. You have 3,000 units per dose. You want the units to cancel, leaving mLs in the numerator. Fill in your numbers. You're going to use your calculator. 3,000 divided by 5,000 is 0.6 mLs per dose as the first part of the answer to the question. And then your second part is looking for mLs per day. So bringing it down, you write your frequency. Remember, dose units are going to cancel. Your days are going to be the denominator. Don't forget to write down your numbers. And you get 1.2 mLs per day. So the first part of the answer is 0.6 mLs per dose. And the second part is 1.2 mLs per day. The most important thing that you need to note for heparin sodium is when you have your patient here, this is their belly. You want to go ahead and make sure when you're giving it sub-Q or subcutaneously that you are rotating sites. Meaning that if you're giving it BID, so 12 hours a day or 2 doses per day, the morning RN usually gives it on one side of the abdomen and the evening RN gives it on the other side or opposite side of the abdomen. You don't want to give the same injection in the same site in one day. Number 5, the patient is receiving a continuous tube feeding at 60 mLs per hour. How long in hours will it take to infuse 500 mLs of solution? So for this one, we have the order for 500 mLs, and just so you remember, we're looking for the units of hours. So our order is 500 mLs. What we have available is 60 mLs per hour. So using our equation, we're going to have 500 mLs, and we want ml units to cancel, leaving hours in the numerator. So 500 divided by 60 is 8.33, or 8.3 hours. As your final answer for number 5. In the clinical setting, they may ask you what time. So let's say you hung your tube feeding at 0800 in military, which is 8 a.m. So you're going to add 8 hours first. So it's going to be 1600 or 4 p.m. In order to figure out the minutes, so remember there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. So if you had to figure out the 0.3 hours, remember you're going to have minutes on the top in the numerator, hours in the denominator, and go ahead and do the math, which is going to be 18 minutes. So the time that this would end if you hung it at 8 a.m. would be at 4:18 p.m. is when you would note that the tube feeding is complete. Number 6, your patient is to receive a bolus tube feeding of 200 mLs over 75 minutes. What is the infusion rate in mLs per hour? So our final units that we're looking for are mLs per hour. So as you can see, they've given us 200 mLs over 75 minutes. We have to remember the conversion, 60 minutes per 1 hour. And I went over this in question number 5. So what you're going to do is 200 mLs over 75 minutes. You want minutes in the numerator, so the minute units cancel. Hours in the denominator, so you're left with mLs per hour. Fill in your numbers, and you'll have 200 times 60 is 12,000 divided by 75, which is 160 mLs per hour as your final answer. Number 7, the patient is ordered to receive prochlorperazine or compazine 500 milligrams IM for nausea every 4 hours PRN. The medication is available as prochlorperazine 2 milligrams per 1 ml. How many mLs of medication would the client receive per dose? So our final units that we're looking for are mLs per dose. They're going to give us the order, the availability, and the frequency. So your order is for 5 milligrams per dose. Our frequency is Q4 hours. So you want to have Q4 hours. Remember that there are 24 hours in a day. So if you divide it by 4 hours, you'll get 6 doses per day. And that'll be PRN or as needed. As needed means that only when the patient complains of nausea. You do not have to give it every 4 hours. The availability of the medication is 2 milligrams per 1 ml. So we're going to go ahead and do our order times availability. You get 5 milligrams per dose. Milligrams in the denominator, so your milligram units cancel. ml in the numerator, 1 and 2, fill in your numbers. And you get 5 divided by 2 is 2.5 mLs per dose. Final answer for number 7. And remember, when you're giving this, you're either using a 1 ml, 3 ml, 5 ml, 10 ml syringe. 1 is too small, 10 is too big. You go with the 3. Make sure you have the appropriate needle size, the gauge, the length, and make sure it's appropriate for the patient's weight and age. Number 8, the nurse is preparing to administer a prescribed dose of Norco 5/325 of hydrocodone bitartrate and acetaminophen for pain. The medication is available as 10/650. How much will the nurse give? The patient is allergic to Tylenol. This is very important. The patient is allergic to Tylenol. Another name for acetaminophen is Tylenol. If the patient is allergic to Tylenol and you're going to give a medication with Tylenol in it, then you cannot give the medication. So how much will the nurse give? 0. Number 9, the client has an order for docusate sodium 100 milligrams PO daily. The medication is available at 200 milligrams per 1 ml. How many mLs will the patient receive per dose? So the final units that we're looking for are mLs per dose. You have your order, your availability, and your frequency. Your order is 100 milligrams per dose. Your availability is 200 milligrams per 1 ml. Frequency is daily, so you're going to have 1 dose per 1 day. Following our equation, you have 100 milligrams per dose, and our final units we're looking for is mLs per dose. So we want to go ahead and cancel the units of milligrams so that you have mLs per dose. Filling in our numbers, you have 0.5 mLs per dose as your final answer. Number 10, a patient with COPD or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease is prescribed Solumedrol as a steroid. The order is to administer 30 milligrams per kilograms per day in 2 divided doses. The client weighs 154 pounds. How many milligrams of medication will be prescribed per dose? So these are the types of questions that I was talking about earlier, which is very important to note your frequency, even if it says 1 dose per 1 day, because it's a good habit to keep that in mind when you start getting questions with 3 different units. So let's go ahead and tackle this. So we are looking at the final units, and they are going to be milligrams per dose. So you're probably wondering, how do I get from 3 units to 2 units? Well, let's go ahead and show you. So the order is 30 milligrams per kilogram all over 1 day. Your frequency is 2 divided doses, so 2 doses per day. And the availability that they give you is 154 pounds. So we're going to have to remember to bring up a few of the conversions. So one of the conversions that we need to know right now is 2.2 pounds per 1 kilogram. So let's go ahead and convert our patient's weight into kilograms. So we have 154 pounds, and we have 1 kilogram, 2.2 pounds, because you want pounds units to cancel. And you have 154 divided by 2.2, which is 70 kilograms. So now we're going to do our order times available, and you have 30 milligrams per kilogram all over 1 day. And you're going to multiply that by 70 kilograms. And your kilogram units cancel, and you're left with 2,100 milligrams per day. So we're almost close. We had 3 units, and now we have 2 units. However, it's still not milligrams over dose. which is what we're looking for, we only have milligrams per day. However, we do have the frequency here. And so what we're going to do is we want days on the top so we can cancel the day units and the dose units on the denominator. So we're left with milligrams per dose. Don't forget to fill in your numbers. And 2100 divided by 2 equals 1050 milligrams per dose as your final answer.